можете рассчитывать на то, что товарищ Сталин сумеет выполнить свой долг.
A son who bore Stalin's blood but none of his mercy, and paid for it with his life. Born into power, but abandoned by love, Yakov Dzhugashvili's life was a silent rebellion against his father's cruelty. His end? One of the darkest yet untold tragedies of Soviet history. This is where the pain begins. Yakov Dzhugashvili entered the world on March 18, 1907, in a small Georgian village called Baji. His mother, Kato Svanidze, was Stalin's first wife, gentle, kind, and everything he wasn't. But fate didn't spare her. Just months after Yakov's birth, typhus took her life. Stalin didn't cry, didn't even stay for the funeral. He left his infant son in the care of Kato's family and disappeared into his revolutionary work. For Yakov, childhood wasn't about toys or stories. It was about silence, absence, and a father who'd already walked away. And here's where it gets even sadder. His mother's relatives raised Yakov in Tbilisi, far from the wealth or comfort his father's name might have offered. He grew up poor, craving affection, and unaware of who his father truly was. The boy who should have known power only knew loneliness. Surrounded by whispers about Stalin's rise, Yakov lived in quiet uncertainty, isolated, invisible, desperate for a family he never truly had. As Yakov wandered through this cold childhood, his father's shadow only grew larger. Stalin climbed the Bolshevik ranks, earning Lenin's trust and cementing his place in history. Yet, for all his power, he never looked back. He never reached out to the son left behind. As Stalin became one of Russia's most feared men, Yakov remained forgotten, a ghost on the edge of history, carrying a name he barely understood. Finally, in the early 1920s, Yakov arrived in Moscow as a teenager, hoping to find a father. Instead, he found a dictator. Stalin's home was no family. It was a military camp of fear. Young Yakov's gentle nature clashed with iron expectations. Nadezhda, Stalin's second wife, tried to care for him, but every meal felt like a test, every word a trap. He became the easiest target, mocked for weakness and stupidity, while his half-siblings were treated better. We're doing a giveaway for a $200 Amazon gift card when we hit 1,000 subscribers. Make sure to smash that subscribe button and comment below so we know to add you to the raffle. Thanks and best of luck to everyone who enters. A brief spark of hope came in 1928 when Yakov met Zoya Gunina, a kind woman who offered him peace. But Stalin destroyed it, forbidding the marriage, humiliating Zoya's family, and mocking Yakov. Broken, he tried to end his life with his father's pistol. He survived, but when Stalin heard, he laughed. He can't even shoot straight. That cruel sentence buried the last fragile bond between father and son. Just when it seemed Yakov had lost all direction, he chose a path that could finally earn him dignity: the Red Army. In the early 1930s, he joined as an artillery cadet, determined to carve his worth through action, not lineage. The discipline gave him something he had never felt. Step by step, he rose to the rank of lieutenant, respected not for being Stalin's son, but for his grit and humility. Yet his name was a curse. Some officers treaded carefully around him, others hated him for who his father was. But Yakov never used that name for advantage. He trained harder, worked longer, and tried to prove, maybe to himself, that he was more than a dictator's child. And as Europe edged toward war, he stood ready to serve a country that barely knew his pain.
L'armée allemande n'est plus qu'à quelques kilomètres de Moscou. La capitale est bombardée tous les jours. La population se réfugie dans le métro. L'écrivain Viktor Kravchenko note dans son journal.
Then came the day that would change everything. June 22, 1941. Hitler's armies thundered into the Soviet Union, unleashing Operation Barbarossa. The Red Army was torn apart by the sudden German onslaught. Yakov's artillery unit was stationed near Vitebsk, caught in the chaos of air raids and encirclement. Communication lines were shattered, ammunition ran dry, and soldiers scattered in confusion. For days, Yakov and his men fought desperately under relentless bombing, holding ground they could no longer defend. By mid-July, near Smolensk, it was over. Wounded and surrounded, Yakov was captured on July 16, 1941. Some said he had been shot and couldn't move. Others claimed his men surrendered after running out of shells. Whatever the truth, the Germans instantly realized who they had: Joseph Stalin's eldest son. To them, he wasn't just a prisoner. He was a trophy, a weapon of humiliation against the Soviet leader himself. And here's where it gets rougher. Yakov was first taken to the POW camp in Hammelburg, where Nazi interrogators saw their golden opportunity. They offered him freedom, comfort, and safety. All he had to do was denounce Stalin, but Yakov refused. No matter how much he hated his father, betraying his country was never an option. When torture and threats failed, they transferred him to Sachsenhausen concentration camp, a place built for high-value prisoners. There, they paraded him like a broken prize, posing him for propaganda photos to demoralize Soviet troops. Yet, in every image, his defiance bled through. He refused to speak, smile, or bend. Even stripped of dignity and freedom, Yakov's silence screamed louder than any words. When word reached Moscow that Yakov had been captured, Stalin's reaction was ice cold. No rage, no sorrow, just silence. To him, surrender was weakness, an unforgivable disgrace. Instead of sympathy, he signed Order Number 270, declaring that any Soviet soldier captured alive was a traitor to the motherland. Even if it wasn't their fault, they'd be branded cowards. That order didn't just apply to soldiers, it applied to his own son. Stalin condemned Yakov as if he were a stranger, refusing to speak his name again. Then, in 1943, the Germans offered a deal: Yakov's freedom in exchange for Field Marshal Friedrich Paulus, captured at Stalingrad. Stalin's reply was chilling: "I will not trade a marshal for a lieutenant." Those words were final. No rescue mission, no plea, no mercy. That single decision sealed Yakov's fate, abandoned by the man who gave him life.
C'est ici, alors que tous ses fidèles le pressent d'évacuer la capitale, qu'il prend une décision qui va tout changer.
What followed inside Sachsenhausen was nothing short of psychological torture. Yakov was thrown into Zellenbau, the high-security wing reserved for special prisoners, spies, royalty, and political hostages. His world shrank to a concrete box barely wide enough to stretch his arms. The walls were gray and wet, the air freezing, and the single light above his bed burned endlessly, never allowing darkness, never allowing rest. Guards were ordered not to speak to him. Meals were barely enough to keep him alive. Stale bread, watery soup, sometimes nothing at all. Days turned to months, then years. Still, no word from Moscow. Stalin, the leader of millions, stayed silent toward his only captured son. Slowly, Yakov began to fade, his skin pale, his frame thin, his eyes empty. But even as his mind cracked under the silence, one thing stayed intact: his loyalty. He never spoke, never cooperated, and never betrayed his country. By early 1943, something inside Yakov had changed. After years of silence and confinement, his defiance began to surface again. Guards recalled him shouting in Russian, refusing orders, and pacing the yard like a man with nothing left to lose. Then on April 14, 1943, it happened. Yakov Dzhugashvili was dead. The official Nazi account claimed suicide, saying he sprinted into the camp's electrified fence. But other prisoners told another story. Some said he had argued with a guard moments before a gunshot echoed. Others believed he was pushed into the wires after refusing commands. Soviet intelligence later hinted that he may have tried to escape and was shot mid-run. Yet no witness statements were ever confirmed, no full report surfaced, and no investigation followed. Stalin never asked for one. Whether Yakov died by his own hand, by bullet, or by deliberate execution, the truth vanished behind barbed wire. What remained was only a brutal end to a life already defined by loneliness and silence. After Yakov's death, Stalin's cruelty didn't stop at the grave. His daughter-in-law, Yulia Meltzer, Yakov's wife, was arrested by the NKVD under false charges of collaboration with the enemy. She was thrown into prison without trial, left to rot for years while her little daughter, Galina, was taken away and hidden from the world. Inside the Kremlin, Yakov's name became taboo. Files were destroyed, photos removed, his existence erased from official history. Stalin never spoke of him again. No mourning, no mention, not even a grave to visit. For the rest of his life, he carried on as if his eldest son had never existed. It wasn't until the collapse of the Soviet Union in 1991 that fragments of Yakov's story finally surfaced. Scattered documents, forgotten testimonies, and glimpses of the man history tried to erase. Yakov's loyalty, his silence, and his suffering were buried not by the Nazis, but by his own father, the man who could command armies, but not show love to his own blood. Yakov Dzhugashvili's death wasn't just a tragedy. It was a reflection of his father's monstrous heart, forgotten by power, remembered by pain. What do you think? Was it rebellion or pure fate? Drop your thoughts below, and if this story hits you, like and subscribe. More untold truths await.